Hi, it's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. So as per usual, I will be telling you how much I would price this cake for at the end of the video. But today is another episode of Bucket List Baking. So this is one of those projects that I've always wanted to do, but I just never got around to it, and finally now I'm doing it. My sister-in-law said that my niece wanted a primarily buttercream cake with chocolate ganache filling, and she also wanted it to be Spider Gwen or Ghost Spider themed. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to try out making a cake decorated with sugar cookies. I've seen this done time and time again, but it never really appealed to me. I really didn't like the look of it that much until I saw this Instagrammer, Cookie Vonster, kind of like Cookie Monster but with a V. And her page was always filled with these amazing sugar cookies. But in the last few years, she's done sugar cookies on cakes, and that finally just kind of switched something in me where I was like, I need to make that style because that is absolutely stunning, gorgeous. Now, I definitely didn't get to the level of Cookie Monster. However, I do feel like I did come up with something that was interesting and different from what I normally do. It also just kind of felt like a full circle moment because I was always so intimidated by cakes, and sugar cookies is really where I started out my journey. This complete design that I created could easily be done with fondant, but my family really dislikes eating fondant. Doesn't matter if it's homemade fondant, purchased fondant, any fondant, it is not their jam. So I was thrilled with the idea that I knew this entire cake would get eaten, and not to spoil anything, but this entire cake did actually get eaten. Every single cookie and every single slice of cake, which is unheard of. Usually I'm left with a ton of cake, but I decided to go more conservatively for the number of people. So I made 4 6-inch pans of chocolate cake, and so it ended up not really being quite an extra tall cake, but definitely taller than your average 6-inch cake. Let's get into that process of how I actually made this. So as you saw, I filled each layer with ganache and then I covered it with dark chocolate ganache. I think I used about a 2-to-1 ratio, a little heavier on the whipping cream than the chocolate, just to give it that really nice smoothness. And I was actually going to make a 3-to-1 ratio, chocolate being the larger ratio, on the outside of the cake so it would be really nice and thick and solid, but I ended up not needing that. The 2-to-1 did a pretty good job, and I was able to solidify that in the fridge and then go ahead and cover the rest with this Italian meringue buttercream. I've made many Spider-Man themed cakes, but I've never gotten to do a Spider-Gwen one, and I really liked it because the colors are just my favorite colors. I love pink and blue, and I love white combos with it. I wasn't quite sure how this cake was actually going to play out because I knew I was going to put sugar cookies on here, but I also wanted a little bit of pizzazz. And I was actually making this cake for a teaser trailer thing that I was doing for something else, so I decided to make it a little prettier with some sprinkles so it would look good plain, and then I knew I was going to add on all these other things. The tricks of the cake content trade, and if you want to know more about how to create so much content out of small things so that you can keep your social media going and build and make money off of your social media, then please do join me at the Bake Fest. Today we're actually having a flash sale where you can get an additional $25 off and you can get 15% off with my code. If all of that sounded like too much for you to understand, because I get it, I'm a visual learner too, I will put all the info in a pinned comment below. I can't believe that we are less than a month out now from the Bake Fest. I am nervous, I am excited, and I can't wait to talk to all of you guys. So this is me rolling out my sugar cookies. It's really funny. A lot of people have been commenting on my sugar cookie recipe, the classic one that I posted a really long time ago now, and they're just like, thank you so much. So many people post things that are not real, and it never occurred to me to post recipes that would not turn out for you guys. It is a very reliable recipe. Definitely go and check it out if you've struggled with sugar cookies before. I assure you, you're going to come out with beautiful, soft cookies that just decorate so nicely. I was using a projector to get that Spider-Gwen shape. I went with a very, very easy version of the character. I generally do this because the more complicated or more detailed you go, the harder it is to, first of all, see the projection on your dough, and it also just doesn't come out right, especially for me, because then I really have to do a lot of freehand work still because your hand is blocking everything. So go simple, go for a coloring page type projection so everything is really simple for you. And I also make sure to leave kind of a border around the edge, but if you don't want a border of any sort, then make sure you're really nice and tight with that. But do be careful, because if you don't cut things properly or things bake up a little bit wonky, then you're not going to end up with the right shape. I put some of the cookies on sticks because I know I want them popping out, and then I just use my bench scraper to create the buildings, which later I do actually forget that I bake, so you'll see me decorate the full cake and then try to add them on later. Decorating with sugar cookies, especially when you're choosing to do something as simple as I am, especially with these buildings, is not tricky or challenging, but it is that extra step that you don't necessarily have to take when you decorate with fondant. So it does take more time to do, but it's kind of easier, I want to say. I love this technique, by the way. Painting on sugar cookies, it's so satisfying and it's so quick in comparison to having to pipe things. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want the lights of the building to sit more inlay. And yeah, I do want it sparkly. So I am adding a bunch of edible glitter on top of that so that the whole building isn't sparkly. I've run out of tipless bags. One time, one of my subscribers gifted me with, 1,000 tipless piping bags, and I was so grateful for them. And now the time has come where I've actually run out. So I'm using these other bags, which interestingly, I got from YouTube because I was at this YouTube Brandcast event and they bought me a ton of baking things so that I could make my little setup, and I still have them, and so now I'm finally using them, but it does mean that I have to attach a plastic coupler and actually use my metal tips, which I haven't done in so long with royal icing. I feel like nothing is more satisfying than watching a cookie kind of start out looking like a bit of a disaster and then watching all of that royal icing just flood in the parts. Love watching it. Like, I could get stuck on watching shorts and reels all day long of people decorating sugar cookies. And I was using pipe and flood consistency for the most part, but I did switch up to a thicker royal icing specifically for this Spider-Gwen. I wanted it to have a cartoon feel, so I decided to go nice and thick here and then go and fill it in with pipe and flood consistency. And it's very interesting because that used to be the exact way I would do every single cookie, but then I discovered the puffy icing technique where you use pipe and flood for everything, and it really creates a beautiful cookie. But sometimes it still calls for that hard outline with the colored in middle. Every time I look at this cookie, and I've edited different versions of this footage, it always looks like it says cheer to me, but I know it says Char. And the reason we didn't put Charlotte on there is because all of us call her Char, so I figured might as well stick with what she's actually called. How many of you guys have a nickname that doesn't even match your name whatsoever, but you go by that exclusively? I don't. Mine's just Ash. Super, super boring. Fun fact about this cake, I actually only gave myself 4 or 5 hours to complete the whole thing from top to bottom. I was just feeling so tired, so burnt out. I made this after the first week of school, so I was just tired, and you can even hear it in my voice. I'm starting to lose my voice. I get this voice fatigue every single year, and my throat just really, really hurts, and it's hard to continue talking for long periods of time, but it's just what happens. I think it happens to every educator, but it especially happens to me because I am singing literally for 6 hours straight almost. So I ended up airbrushing this number 6. You could also do this same technique by just blending blue and white royal icing. I find it easier to do with my airbrush system. And of course, you always want to make sure you're airbrushing on actually dry cookies. Now you might be wondering, how did you get these cookies to be dry in time, especially with such a short timeline? And The reason is because I dehydrate my cookies, so I put them into the oven at 175 degrees Fahrenheit in between each layer of icing that I want dried. In my climate, it takes approximately 24 hours for the cookies to be fully solidified so that I can actually stack them with the decorations on them and not have them get wrecked. But since we aren't stacking this, it's going to be dry enough so that I can place them on there fairly quickly. So as you saw there, I actually forgot about these buildings as I previously mentioned, so I ended up squishing in a lot of buttercream decor that I had put on there initially. I decided not to add on the Spider Gwen cookie at this moment because I was afraid that it would flop around as we were driving. It probably would have been fine because the chocolate ganache really does help keep things in place. But just in case, because that Spider Gwen cookie is a little bit taller than that Spiderweb Char cookie, I decided to leave it off since I have the luxury of being able to set up wherever I want. Now let's get into the pricing of this cake. So the pricing is pretty straightforward for this cake. It would be $75 just for the 6-inch buttercream cake alone. Plus the sugar cookies would be $41. So in total, it would be $116 Canadian. And I've seen sugar cookie prices really skyrocketing. I was at a bakery the other day and the sugar cookies were about $7 each, and that was for a just regular sugar cookie. It was a cute design and everything, but it was not custom. That being said, you might not want to make a cake like this without a minimum that's a little bit higher because of course I had to make the sugar cookie dough. Now I'm left with all this other sugar cookie dough, and in my case, I'm going to make more tutorials with that dough, but in a bakery's case, they might not have another use specifically for that. So definitely think about implementing minimums at your bakery so that you can make sure it's still worth it for you to make cakes like this. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. And be sure to check out that pinned comment because today and tomorrow is the flash sale for the Bake Fest.